A thin April drizzle painted wavering silver streaks across the supermarket's broad front windows, blurring the distant city lights into impressionist smudges, and inside, beneath the tired hum of fluorescent tubes, Marisa Nguyen pressed her cart forward with a slow, deliberate care that betrayed how fragile the arithmetic of her life had become. Every item she picked up was weighed not only in grams but in cents. Every brand label studied like a small battlefield report on price, nutrition, and whether her 7-year-old son Leo would agree to swallow it without protest. She had learned to choose store brands over name-you brands, rice over pasta, frozen chicken over fresh cuts, and, lately, more apologies than treats, because a single missed payment on anythrent, daycare, the ancient Toyota's overdue oil change, could send the whole structure of perfunctory stability crashing. Even now, clutching the worn envelope that held the last of her grocery budget, she rehearsed the small lies she would tell herself. That a splash of fish sauce could make plain noodles interesting, that canned peaches counted as dessert, that Leo's whispered wish for chocolatey chip waffles could wait for some brighter, unknown future. Around her, checkout belts rattled, scanners chirped, and other shoppers moved with the unthinking confidence of people who never had to decide between milk and detergent, while Marisa silently reviewed what she absolutely must put back before she reached the register. Should it be the tiny box of Band-Aids or the bananas or the half-price jar of peanut butter? Meanwhile, 3 lanes over, a man named Jonah Blake, once an electrical engineer tundurate, who driver tun defined, watched the rain slide down his jacket sleeve as he waited with a lone carton of eggs. He was 42, recently laid off from a regional freight company and nursing a dull migraine of regrets. A failed marriage blurred by years on the road, an estranged teenage daughter who had stopped answering his texts, and a bank account that felt as brittle as his faith in himself. He didn't know why he still chose to shop here, in a neighborhood far from the cheap motel he was calling home, except perhaps to cling to the memory of purpose. This was where he and his ex-wife used to buy groceries every other Sunday, when they still believed in their shared future. If someone had asked, he would have said he felt invisible in the city's glittering sprawl, useful only to the asphalt he drove over. But today, for reasons neither divine nor logical, his gaze lifted just as Marisa, 3 carts ahead, opened her envelope and frowned at the receipt totals piling up faster than she could subtract. Her face, a mask of practiced calm, flickered with a defeat so quick it was almost imperceptible almost. Jonah saw the tremor in her hand as she slid the box of noodles from belt to pocket of her coat, intending to abandon it discreetly. And something inside him on ember of old decency he thought long extinguished glowed. He remembered his own mother doing that very calculus at a discount store, stretching welfare dollars until they squealed, and recalled the shame of noticing classmates staring at the generic cereal in his lunchbox. The line moved, the cashier called out prices in bored rhythm, and Marisa's total crept higher. She swallowed, reached for the bananas, hesitated. Jonah's body reacted before his mind issued formal orders, stepped out of his lane, ignoring the mutter of the man behind him, and slid into hers, setting his egg carton among her groceries. Marisa turned, startled, as he said, voice quiet but firm. Let me cover this simple words that felt like breaking a spell. For half a beat she thought she must have misheard, that this stranger couldn't possibly know the shame she was courting, the dread of insufficient funds. Pride rose hot, ready to protest, but exhaustion, heavier than pride, pressed a damp hand on her shoulder. She met his eye-stired blue meeting, tired brown-and, saw no condescension, only gentle insistence. The cashier, sensing drama, paused. The small queue behind them leaned closer. Marisa's pulse hammered, and she heard her own voice whisper, I can't take that. Yet already something in her chest loosened, as if hope were tugging at a knot. Jonah smiled, a thin, worn thing, and shrugged as though buying an extra cart of groceries were the simplest errand on a rainy Wednesday. You don't have to take anything, he said. Just let me help. The cashier cleared her throat time to choose. Marisa glimpsed Leo's lunchbox in her mind, the emptiness she would have to disguise tomorrow, and before doubt could reclaim her, she nodded. The scanner resumed its rapid beep-beep litany. The stranger handed his debit card across, and Maurice's grocery total milk, rice, peanut butter, even the banana slid onto Jonah's account, like puzzle pieces finding their place. Receipt printed, Jonah lifted the bags into Maurice's cart, while the world kept spinning, and in that whirl a seed of connection was planted, delicate yet stubborn. They stepped outside together, the drizzle now a steady rain knitting the air into shimmering threads. Under the awning, Jonah handed her the receipt proof of kindness, though neither would ever use it that way. And Marisa realized she didn't know what to say to this man, whose name she didn't even know. Gratitude cramped inside her rib cage, battling leftover embarrassment, until finally she murmured, "I'll pay you back somehow." Jonah shook his head and smiled with a trace of melancholy, like someone recalling music from a closed chapter of life. "Just pass it on when you can," he said. Water dripped from the edge of his cap. Streetlights painted halos on puddles. Buses hissed by. Yet in that small shelter they hovered in a moment that felt suspended from ordinary time. Marisa gathered courage and asked his name. He told her. She offered hers. They laughed softly at the awkwardness of introductions after currency had changed hands. And then a gust of wind pushed the rain sideways, stinging their cheeks, and Marisa motioned toward the exit, explaining she had to reach home before Leo's sitter left. Jonah nodded, but something inside him, unready to let the fragile link dissolve, prompted him to offer a ride, saying his pickup was parked nearby. Marisa, wary but trusting the peculiar serenity of the encounter, considered. Saving the taxi fare would help, and the sitter did live 2 blocks from her apartment. Besides, the stranger's kindness had already rewritten her evening script. She agreed with a cautious smile. The ride was brief, 10 minutes through neon Oslick streets that smelled of wet asphalt and noodle soup vented from late-night stalls. Inside the cab of Jonah's aging Ford, grocery bags rustled, the heater sighed, and conversation sprouted in tender shoots. Marisa shared that she worked party-time at a print shop while finishing online business classes, that life since her husband's sudden death 2 years ago was a mosaic of half-amended pieces. Jonah confessed he was between jobs, living out of a motel near the highway, struggling to recalibrate his compass. He didn't mention the unpaid child support he wished he could fix, nor the way nightmares of jackknifed 18-wheelers woke him nightly. Still, their words wove a quiet empathy. Each recognized in the other the forlorn bravery of people who kept pushing forward though their maps were smudged. When they reached Marisa's building, an aging brick square with flickering stairwell lights, Leo came charging down, arms wide, shouting, "Mom!" Marisa scooped him close. Jonah watched, a lump in his throat, remembering the last time his own daughter had hugged him that way. He carried the grocery bag to Marisa's door, met the sitter's polite nod, and set the bags on a chipped linoleum counter. Leo, curious, asked who the man was. Marisa offered a careful answer that Mr. Blake was a friend who had helped them today. Jonah knelt, shook Leo's hand, and felt a strange ache at the boy's shy grin. Marisa insisted he stay for tea as thanks. He almost refused, but the inviting warmth of that cramped kitchenette's mismatched mugs, hand-drawn fridge art, little potted basil stirred a longing for normalcy. So he sat, and over chamomile and the steam of reheated fromage, he told stories of the road, landscapes unfurling like film reels, and Marisa watched Leo's eyes widen. In turn, Leo recited a joke about a dinosaur at the dentist, and Jonah laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. By the time rain eased to mist, a tacit pact had formed. They were no longer strangers but fellow travelers whose paths had intersected at a junction of need and grace. Days unfolded. Jonah, tired of motel solitude, found excuses to visit first to drop off a box of spare Lego he'd retrieved from storage, then to drive Marisa to the farmer's market on discount day. Marisa, wary of dependency, offered payment in small reciprocations. She edited Jonah's dusty resume, brought him leftover curry, introduced him to the community job board where her print-a-shop manager posted openings. Evenings saw them sharing takeout on Marisa's couch, while Leo built elaborate spaceships on the carpet. They discovered overlapping taste-sold soul music, spicy food, the quiet thrill of late-night documentaries. Yet beneath the growing intimacy ran undercurrents of doubt. Marissa feared mistaking gratitude for affection, worried she might lean too hard on someone who could vanish. Jonah feared contaminating her tentative stability with his own unresolved failures. Still, life, indifferent to such worries, kept nudging them closer. On Saturday, when the printy shop server crashed, Jonah spent 5 sweaty hours reconfiguring cables until the blinking green light returned, earning the gratitude of Marissa's boss, who offered him a temporary IT slot. Later, Marissa helped Jonah video call his daughter in Oregon. Though the teenage girl remained distant, the call ended without anger. A small miracle. Each success stitched new threads between them. But progress invites ghosts. One rainy afternoon, Marissa opened the mailbox to find a final notice envelope. Her husband's long-pending medical bill had been sold to collections. The summonstress. Panic smothered her like a plastic bag. That evening she told Jonah, voice trembling, that she might lose the apartment. Jonah's immediate impulse was to offer money. He had some savings left, but pride and fear flared. Marissa refused, declaring she couldn't forever be beholden. Frustration cracked the calm they'd nurtured. Jonah, hurt, argued that accepting help wasn't weakness. Marissa, ashamed, countered that she had to stand on her own for Leo's sake. Their voices rose, and Leo, hearing from the bedroom, crept out, eyes wide. Seeing his worry, they fell silent. The storm outside hammered the windows. Jonah left, rain soaking his jacket, carrying the sting of misunderstanding. That night, he sat in his motel room, listening to trucks roar by, and felt the hollowness of quitting too soon. He realized his offer of money had been clumsy. What Marissa needed wasn't a bailout, but a partner in problem-solving. He decided to fight differently. Over the next week, Jonah dove into research between shifts at the print shop. He contacted a nonprofit legal clinic, gathered forms for debt negotiation, and discovered a hospital charity program that could retroactively reduce medical bills. He assembled a folder thick with possibilities. Meanwhile, Marissa wrestled guilt and anger, missing Jonah's companionship but uncertain how to bridge the gap. When Jonah finally returned, folder in hand, Leo opened the door and hugged him fiercely. Marissa stood behind, apology already pooling in her eyes. Jonah didn't chastise. He spread papers across the table, explaining options, timelines, contacts. Together they drafted a hardship letter, gathered income statements, and submitted the packet. Weeks crawled by, tension coiled. Then, one crisp morning, an official envelope arrived. The hospital had forgiven 80% of the balance, set the remainder on a manageable plan. Marissa wept, laughter tangled with sobs. She phoned Jonah, voice trembling with joy. That night they met at a riverside park lit by lanterns for a spring festival. Music drifted, children chased glowing balloons, and Marissa, under a canopy of cherry blossoms, thanked Jonah not merely for paperwork but for believing she was worth the fight. Jonah, unsteady, admitted that meeting her had reminded him he was still capable of good. Emotions surged. They kissed gentle, hesitant, real while petals spiraled around them like soft applause. Yet life rarely crowns a single kiss as finale. Challenges persisted. Jonah's motel stay ended abruptly when the owner sold the property. The printy shop gig wasn't permanent. Marissa's online classes neared finals, but now they faced turbulence as a team, trading burdens instead of collecting them. Jonah moved into a spare room offered by Marissa's elderly neighbor in return for handyman repairs. Leo, noticing the deeper warmth blooming between his mother and Jonah, asked shyly if Jonah could attend the school talent show. He did, cheering louder than anyone when Leo performed a karate routine. Afterwards, Leo slipped his tiny hand into Jonah's and said, "You're like my superhero." Jonah blinked back tears, feeling the pieces of his once-see fractured identity click into a new, humbler shape. The first true crisis struck on a July evening heavy with humidity. Marissa's Toyota, overloaded from a bulk grocery run, stalled at an intersection and refused to restart. Traffic horns blared. Steam hissed from the hood. Marisa, knees weak, called Jonah, who arrived within minutes. He popped the hood, diagnosed a failed radiator hose, and arranged a tow. At the garage, the mechanic's estimate eclipsed their savings. Old panic threatened, but Marisa met Jonah's eyes, saw determination, not despair. Together they negotiated a payment plan and bussed home, laughing at their oil-stained hands. That laughter, brittle at first, rang truer each block, weaving a protective charm against gloom. They realized adversity no longer isolated them, it bonded them. Summer ripened. Jonah secured a full-time facilities job at the city college, with benefits. Marisa aced her courses, earning a micro-grant to develop a small batch printing venture. Evenings at their kitchen table, they sketched logos, balanced budgets, and dreamed. One night, Leo asked if Jonah would stay forever. Silence followed, thick with unsaid hopes. Jonah, heart pounding, answered that he would like nothing more. Marisa reached across, squeezed his hand, and said forever sounded good. Plans took root, combining households, clearing old debts. Perhaps, one distant day, a road trip to show Leo the desert skies Jonah loved. Autumn arrived, crisp and gold. Marisa's venture launched modestly, printing custom wedding invitations and art posters. Jonah's job, though unglamorous, felt solid. Their apartment, once echoing with absence, now thrummed with music, cooking aromas, and the shuffle of Lego projects. On a Saturday exactly 1 year after the supermarket encounter, Jonah proposed a celebration picnic. They returned to that very supermarket, bought ingredients without scanning price tag cakes, fresh berries, even chocolate-a-chip waffles. At checkout, Jonah noticed a young man counting coins with shaking hands, placing items back as totals climbed, a mirror of last year. Jonah caught Marisa's gaze. Without words, they stepped forward together, offering to pay. The young man, cheeks flushed with surprise, stammered thanks. As they exited, Marisa whispered, "Full circle," and Jonah squeezed her waist. At the park, under trees shedding amber leaves, they toasted with lemonade, recalling the stormy night that led them here. Leo, mouth sugar-a-coated, declared it the best day ever, as sun dipped, casting long shadows of 3 figures intertwined on the grass. Jonah realized that a simple act a stranger paying for grocery shad unfurled into a saga of resilience, proof that kindness is not a solitary spark, but a fuse that once lit, carries light forward. He vowed silently to keep that fuse burning. Weeks later, the nonprofit clinic invited Marisa to speak at a fundraiser. She stood nervously before donors, recounting her journey, how one stranger's compassion had shifted her trajectory. As she spoke, Jonah and Leo watched from the audience, pride shimmering. Marisa concluded with a lesson wrapped in truth, that every life sits atop unseen fault lines, and a gentle hand can steady the ground. Applause rolled. Pledges exceeded targets. After, an elderly woman approached Jonah, confessing his story had moved her to volunteer. Jonah smiled, humbled, sensing the ripple widening. Time moved as it must, yet the memory of that supermarket lane remained a living ember. Each Thanksgiving they returned, buying extra groceries to donate. They told Leo the story over and over, teaching him that heroes often wear rain-soaked jackets and carry nothing more magical than empathy. On the 5th anniversary, Marisa's printing business occupied a sunny storefront with Jonah's rewired lighting. Leo, now 12, helped after school. Jonah, promoted to facilities manager, coached a community robotics club and reconnected with his daughter, who visited that winter and found herself welcomed by a family forged in serendipity. One quiet December night, when city lights shimmered like distant constellations, Jonah wrapped his arm around Marisa on their small balcony and whispered that he sometimes still felt like the man who had walked into a store for eggs and found redemption. Marisa tilted her head on his shoulder and answered that maybe redemption had been looking for him, using her empty wallet as a map. They laughed softly, breath clouding in the cold, hearts warm. Looking back, neither could pinpoint the exact moment kindness became love or love became home. Perhaps it was baked into every mundane task they tackled, side by side balancing ledgers, coaxing cars to run, comforting Leo after nightmares, but wherever the pivot lay, they knew the moral by heart. That generosity, offered without expectation, returns as unforeseen grace, that accepting help is a courage equal to giving it, and that the truest wealth is measured not by saved dollars, but by shared burdens and amplified joy. Wrapped in that knowledge, they faced each dawn with an unspoken promise to keep passing the flame until the world, or at least their corner of it, glowed a little brighter.